Option line, it goes short, that's clever. Now Insigne from Cavalry.
Looks for goal, finds the goal. Carl Halifax 2, and we're all square in Ottawa.
Goals in a 90-minute performance they have ever scored against Bobby Smyrniotis' side. And the first time they have held a clean sheet against Forge at Echo Field. A complete team performance.
Canadian Premier League Newsroom, presented by Volkswagen. We are back. We are live on a Tuesday. I'm Charlie O'Connor-Clark, hosting this week for Christian Jack, who's away in Halifax this week, doing some important stuff. And somehow we are through week 17 in the Canadian Premier League. I don't know how that happened, but I was actually also away this weekend. So this podcast will be an endeavor in educating myself just as much as all of you about the 4 games throughout the weekend, which were pretty special. So just to kick us off here really quickly, let's get the schedule board up as we run through the results. Cavalry 3, Forge FC 0 on Friday night. Eric Kobza, Willie Akio, and Fraser Aird from the penalty spot in a big win for the Cavs at home. On Saturday, we had Atletico Ottawa hosting York United. Ottawa getting 2 goals from their captain, Carl Howarth, a late equalizer from Diego Espejo, while York saw Brian Wright, Kevin Dos Santos, and a Nathan Ingham own goal help them split the points. Vancouver and Valour, no scoring to speak of from that one on Sunday afternoon in Langley. It's a 0-0 draw between those sides. And then we had our weekend wrapping up on the holiday Monday yesterday in Halifax at the Wanderers grounds as Halifax fall 2-1 to Pacific FC. Pacific getting goals from Tommy Mayer-Jaguar, Josh Hurd, before Halifax got one back at the end from Dan Nimick, but not quite enough for a natal day victory for them. And I think we're just going to have to jump right into it because, again, we need some of our cast of characters to help us break down these 4 games. We are going to start with Mitchell Tierney. Friday night, you were covering the Cavalry Forge win for us. If you can remember as far back as Friday, I know it's Tuesday. It's the Cavalry's first win over Forge in almost exactly a year. Mitchell, you wrote that this was a statement performance for Cavalry. Maybe tell me what you give this game out of 10 and what you enjoyed about it.
Yeah, I'll give this one an 8.5 out of 10. I think it was an absolutely electric night at Atco Field. You know, pretty world-class free kick routine. We had backflips. We had a horse that ran on the pitch. That didn't actually happen. I just wanted to see if I could trick you while you were, because you were away this weekend. But I think overall it was probably the most dominant performance we've ever seen Cavalry play against Forge. And that's a pretty big deal for a club where, you know, this has been a club that's in Forge that's gotten a 1-over on Cavalry on multiple occasions. So yeah, like Tommy Wilden Jr. talked about this match after the fact, you know, as a fan, this game had everything you'd want to see, a Cavalry fan. That is, this game had everything you want to see. And, you know, the team just really delivered.
They absolutely did, and I certainly love the backflips you're seeing on screen here from Willie Akio and Gauthier Intigny. Shout out Charlie Trafford for his little cartwheel too. He did better than I could, certainly. And to answer Thomas's question in the chat about the best CPL celebrations of all time, for me, it's actually still in that same corner of Spruce Meadows where Jose Escalante back in 2019 ripped the corner flag out and rode it like a horse. Like top 10 electric moment in this league's history, and I'm sure we'll have some more great celebrations from that team to add to it. But before we break down a little bit more specifically on what was working for Cavalry, let's go back and hear Tommy Wheeldon Jr. break down, I think, one of those goals specifically.
We actually challenged the guys tactically in a few ways to give a different look of ourselves today, and they execute that. And the set plays, I've got to tip my hat to Leon Hapgood. He works meticulously with our video analyst, Daniel Hutchins. And that one goes for them because you see when we scored it, the first one was to celebrate with Kobza, but you see a lot of the players actually tip their hat to the coaching staff, and for me that shows a really good culture because everyone's working together and they'll buy in now because I'm sure Leon will come up with some crazy one next week.
If Tommy says that Leon will come up with a crazy one next week, I want to know what this one was, because that set piece routine was one of the crazier, well-executed ones that I've seen. A great goal. But Mitchell, you wrote in your analysis after this game that it was kind of a new attacking setup for Cavalry that was working really well for them. Maybe just tell us a little bit about what that was and what that looked like and why you thought it worked so well for them.
Yeah, well, a week after, not scoring at all in the nation's capital, they kind of wanted to switch things up a little bit and took Joe Mason out, put Ali Musi up top, and they kind of had their usual front four, but it was more what happened behind it that really made it dynamic, which is they had Shamit Shom kind of playing as a false fullback, where he was a fullback when they were defending, but once they got into possession, he'd tuck into the middle, and then Jesse Daly could press up a little bit. Both press the Forge back line, but also he could take some space away from Kyle Becker as well and play in between the lines. There was a lot to like in what he did. And then otherwise, they found a lot of joy in kind of overloading the Forge left side, or I guess the Forge right side their left side with Gauthier Insigne there. Just his pace alone against Rezart Rama created a lot of problems and really pinned him back. But also the fact that, they had Alex Ashton-Yodi Johnson start the match by stepping into midfield again. There's a bit of a gap there that Cavalry was able to exploit by moving into that area. So I liked all of that. And yeah, just a dynamic performance from their front four and everyone in behind as well.
Yeah, a very encouraging one, I think, for Cavalry, for me, who have been very good this year and are very much in a title race here. They were first place until Pacific took it back for them on Monday. But I don't know if the goals, or they've had the depth of scoring that they would have wanted at a lot of times this year. So that's encouraging to see, with Meyer Bevan suspended as well. Mitchell, before we get into Forge, though, let's go into your specific list of greats and standout performers in this game, because I feel like there will be a few probably primarily from Cavalry.
Yeah, I think they're honestly all from Cavalry in a 3-0 match, but Gauthier Insigne, the obvious choice here. He won penalty for the third goal, set up the first goal. I think our leading candidate for under 21 Canadian Player of the Year, given his recent form. Camargo, the way that he can just drop into those pockets of space and just connects everything in that attacking unit is just so important. And he was fantastic at that in this match, creating 3 chances. Bobby Smirniotis went out of his way to give some kudos to Dan Klomp. So I will as well for his defensive effort. And, players probably up there for Defender of the Year as well. And then, Jesse Daly in the midfield, just excellent work in kind of a new role and adapting to that. And finally, Willie Akio. Anytime you do backflips, you'll end up in my list of greats. That goes without saying. So his goal as well was really well taken.
I want to see more crazy celebrations for like defenders and stuff, because I feel like they are also really athletic and can do stuff like that, but they don't score a lot of goals. So I want to see like a really big tackle and somebody stands up and does a flip. Anyway, you mentioned Willie Akio. I think that's his 3rd goal against Forge now in the Canadian Premier League. He, I believe, spoke a little bit about that post-match. So let's go back to Spruce Meadows and hear from him.
It's always big. Every match we have against Forge, it's always a very close match, very tight match. And, Forge is a really good team. And, we just knew we had to come out and really perform, play 97 minutes, just stay focused. And Tommy put out a really good plan, and we just executed very, very well. And myself against Forge, I score quite a few times against them as well. So it's sometimes a little bit personal. So I had to come out and play my best game.
I definitely think one of his goals against Forge when he was with Valour was quite the belter. So go look that one up. As for Forge, though, we're going to start by giving them the first word. We'll go back there and we'll hear what Ali Hajaberpour had to say, and then maybe we'll discuss if we agree with him or not.
Yeah, obviously disappointing to start the second half giving away a goal on the set piece. We thought going into the first half was okay. We did some good things. We had some good chances. Obviously, the game was a little back and forth. Both teams were kind of in the game, and then to give away maybe not a cheap goal, but a goal that you kind of don't want to give away on a set piece kind of sets things in motion. And then we stopped defending a little bit, and they scored another, and then we're kind of chasing the game. The game becomes open, and then a third one is possible. Just disappointing. Obviously, we're going to look back on the game and see how it went a different view, but from the field, they just felt maybe they wanted a little more than us tonight.
Maybe they wanted it a little more than them tonight. That is an interesting comment there. Mitchell, do you feel like that was the case? Maybe tell me what you saw from Forge in this game and maybe what Cavalry was stopping them from doing, what they wanted to do, and what wasn't working for Forge.
Well, first and foremost, I just wanted to quickly comment on Willie Accio and that goal against Valour. He had a moment where he almost did something similar, and Forge definitely remembered that as well because they just hacked him down immediately in the midfield when he started dancing through some guys. So they remember that super well. But I think Bobby Smirniotis actually put it great when he said, they weren't hungry enough defensively comparatively. They had some good moments where they were able to play through the Cavalry press and create some chances while doing that. But when you allow a goal like they did on the set piece, where yes, it was a brilliant routine, but they switched off a little bit in their coverage and allowing Forge to do that and allowing them to get that cross in from Insigne out wide. And then, the Accio goal as well. They really switched off on that one, just allowing him to walk in there. So it wasn't the usual Forge defensive performance, I thought. And I think that created a lot of issues for them where, Cavalry didn't have to maybe open it up as much up top because they were already a couple of goals up and Forge, struggled from there. So, yeah, I think that overall, I think it was defensively that things kind of let Forge down in this one. And, another lesson for them in terms of going on the road and maybe defending a little better, being defense first.
Yeah, it hasn't been an easy season for Forge. They've had some tremendous ups and some concerning downs at times, but Bobby Smirniotis is never one to get particularly high or low in the course of a season. So maybe we'll go back to Calgary one more time and we'll just hear the thoughts of their manager.
They kept a few more players higher up the field with Camargo and a little bit of a different setup, and Camargo does a great job playing between the lines and drifting places. So, in the first 15 minutes, he posed problems for us, and that's the beauty of the game. Each team is trying to do that. Of course, when the first goal has gone in, it's we're going to open up and play a little bit more. With that always comes risk, and with risk comes the ability to be scored on again. So I think that's what's happened today.
Very quickly, before we do get to what's next, I think this is a great question from Thomas in the chat about, does Willie Accio stay in the front three for Cavalry? When Bevan's back, they've got Insigne, they've got Ali Moussi. They've also got other guys like Joe Mason that need to play minutes. Sergio Camargo can play in behind there, but they might kind of put him in a three occasionally. What are your thoughts, Mitch? Do you kind of shake him up? Does Accio stay in there?
Oh, it's so difficult because I think Camargo has to stay in the middle, just given what he's done. And then, I think Ali Moussi has to play out right. So, and with what Insigne's doing, I honestly think he might come out just once Bevan comes back and you go Bevan, Insigne, Camargo, and Moussi. But it's a good problem to have. And I do think, like in this match, there'll be different problems that will present themselves over the course of the season. The other thing is they're playing, and we'll get ahead to this, but they are playing Valour, obviously, which is Akio's old club. So there might be a bit of extra impetus to get him into this game. But I think as it stands right now, unfortunately, again, nothing from what he's doing. It's just what others are doing. I don't know if he starts in that front four right now.
I think you're probably right. And I think if the playoffs started, maybe not today, but in a couple of weeks, I think that you probably would go back to what had been working before, just because you work on a larger body of work, right, for when you need it the most. But again, I don't think that there's a problem with having somebody like Willie Accio or Gaute Insigne, whoever it is, on the bench, because they're such dynamic and explosive players that, not only can they come in and do an incredible job in maybe the last 30, 35 minutes of a game, but if the guy who does start knows that they've got someone to come off the bench like that, then he knows that he has to make a bigger impact in maybe a shorter stretch as well. And there's just a little bit more energy in that Cavalry team there. But we move on. Mitchell, tell me, what are both of these clubs up to next week?
Well, I mentioned it a little bit. Cavalry, they're heading to IG Field to take on Valour in the opening match of this upcoming slate of weekend fixtures on Friday. And Forge, they're hosting the final 905 derby of the season on Saturday, and one that obviously will be very big considering, where both these clubs are in terms of the playoff race. So that's going to be one of the matches you're going to want to, for sure tune into or go to if you have that opportunity this weekend.
Absolutely. You should definitely not miss that one. All right, Mitchell, we are going to have you back on at the end of the show to bookend us with the Halifax Pacific game. But until then, you can go and, I don't know, you can go have a coffee or you can watch us talk if you want for the next half hour. But with that, we are going to substitute you out and we are going to bring in Benedict Rhodes, who was our correspondent this week for the Atletico Ottawa and York draw, where we got bit of a thriller in a six-goal tie, lots of goals, the 9th draw between these teams in 13 CPL meetings. Benny, tell me kind of what happened in this game, because again, I missed it, and your rating out of 10.
Yeah, what happened in this game? There's 6 goals. There's Brian Wright scoring his first goal this season at long last. Took him, I think it's the 19th game of the season, I believe, for York, and he still was missing that first goal, so it's good to see him finally get his first one under him. And it was a weird own goal, as you'll see in the highlights we're watching on YouTube. No one's quite sure how it ended up in the back of the net, but it did. So York benefited from that. Carl Howarth rolling back the years, playing as well as I've ever seen him play. And out of 10, Thomas in the chat been asked me on Twitter for a 10. I'm leaning towards the 9.5, 10 range. And this was an exciting game. Had a bit of everything, and can't ask much more than that, really.
Okay. I see. For me, I think it can only be a 10 if there's a winner. I think a draw at the end of a game maybe just takes that last little, like, you're not quite as satisfied at the end of the game as a neutral if nobody's won. But I'm sure both of these teams are. Well, maybe we'll get into that. Which of these teams is happier with the point? I think we'll start with Ottawa, Benedict, because you wrote in your analysis that this was a point gained rather than 2 lost for them. They clawed back into it twice. Tell me a little bit how you saw them adjust after going down both times to find a way back into this game.
Yeah, so that's impressed me with Ottawa all season, especially even the last 2 seasons under Carlos Gonzalez, has been their sort of ability to not really panic under pressure. I think sometimes when you go down 1-0 or 2-0, you have a tendency to kind of worry and maybe make some sloppy mistakes, I guess, trying to get back into the game rather than play the football that you're good at playing. I think a credit to this Ottawa side, they played as they know they can play, which is hit teams on the counterattack, play through the midfield, be defensively sound first, and then worry about the goals. And that's something that they did, and kind of chipped away and pressed high up the pitch, and they sort of played the football that they're good at playing rather than trying to force something to try and find a quick goal. So I think that's credit to them, and that's definitely something that I think, like I said, point gained rather than 2 lost for them, because they were down 2-0. They should have been down 3-0. Brian Wright hit the crossbar from inside the penalty area. Should have had his second goal of the game. And definitely a point gained, I think, for Ottawa in this game.
All right, and we will now go back to TD Place, I think, and we'll get Carlos Gonzalez's thoughts and see if he agrees with you, Benedict.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is, at the end of the day, a positive point, because we were 0-2 near the end of the first half. So we have to take it like that. Also in the second half, we went back to the 2-3 situation. So we bounced back twice. Positive things. I think we started well. I think the first 15, 20 minutes were quite good, in which we imposed our idea. After that, we started to do things that we shouldn't. And we had 15 terrible minutes in which they scored the 2 goals, they created more chances. And after we were capable to stabilize ourselves again, and the last 10 minutes of the first half and the first 15 minutes or 20 minutes of the second half were quite good. As you say, ups and downs during the game, a game that you are always behind of it, so you have to catch the game, and this makes in certain moments that you are not organized, that you lose certain things that makes the game go into details and into craziness. So, yeah. We can be satisfied for the point.
Turned out he did agree with you, and I knew that because I had seen the clip already, but there had to be some kind of suspense. But we also saw a little bit of leadership in this game from Carl Howarth, who means so much to soccer in Ottawa and to this club. taking the captain's armband this year, finding his way back into the lineup after injury, and playing some of his best football, I think, at the moment for this club. It's always fun to see him at the top of his game. He was asked after this game which of his 2 goals he liked more, which one meant more to him. So let's go back there and see what he had to say.
I think probably the first one. I think that was, we were under the cosh a little bit there. We were struggling, and it kind of brought us out from that and gave us the chance to go on and get back into the game. So for what it meant to the team, probably the first one, and cheeky little nutmeg there as well. So that was nice. So yeah, scored a few free kicks in my day, but that first one was nice too.
Cheeky little nutmeg. I think Carl Howarth saw what like Leo Messi's been doing recently, and he's like, I can do that. That's easy. I'll do that. York. There are some bright spots in this game. They scored 3 goals. That's not something that they've done a lot this year, so that's huge for them. But it's 2 painful blown leads from York United in this game. Benedict, what did you like about them that allowed them to get those leads, and what did you not like that led to them squandering them?
I think their movement in this game was really good. On the right wing, especially Clement Bahia was fantastic, especially in the first half. It was kind of a bit of a mismatch speed-wise with McDonald Neba, and they took full advantage of that, playing in behind and making some good runs to the byline and crossing the ball into the box for first for Wright and second for Dos Santos. And both those goals were very similar, and they found a game plan and they stuck to it. I think they're very direct in this game too, and some of the runs into the box were good. Like Brian Wright on his first goal made that sort of late run undetected, ran right through the defenders like they weren't even there, and tapped the ball into the back of the net. So I think they're finding a confidence, I guess, and they're hoping that for Brian Wright that can continue with Saza Di Rosario out for a month now. They're going to hope that Brian Wright can sort of keep that up and sort of find his form and go on a bit of a run as they look to make a late push for the playoffs, I guess. They're currently in a spot, but it won't be easy with Halifax around their tail as well.
Yeah, it certainly won't be easy. York in a 3-way tie on points, at least for 4th place with Atletico Ottawa and Halifax. It is going to be pretty tight down the stretch and a lot of fun. We don't have a clip from Martin Nash, unfortunately, because of some audio issues at TD Place. And I don't know, there's a lot going on there at times, but we do have one of York's defender, Tas Mortakudis, who was asked if he felt after this game that York maybe should have held on and won this game.
Absolutely. I think we're definitely looking at it that way. You're right. It's a tough blow against a good side who's had a really good run of form at home as of late, especially. And look, we were happy that we were able to score 3 goals. To be honest, in the game, that's an important milestone for us because we've struggled to score kind of 3 goals in games this season. Goals haven't come as easy. So to show that kind of touch has been nice and promising for future weeks. So there's definitely a lot of positives to take, but like you mentioned, a little bit disappointed inside to know that we could have got 3 points out of that one for sure.
Could have got 3 points out of that one for sure. He says there might be more, attackers in our category here than defenders if we pick out our standouts. Only 2 players from this game in the team of the week, actually, and we'll see if you are able to name them here. You do. I think who's in the team of the week, but we'll see if you get there and agree. But who, Benedict, for you individually stood out as worthy of recognition from this game?
Yeah, on the York side of things, I was thinking about Clement Bahia. I thought he was fantastic. Brian Wright, got to give him some credit for his movement in this game. Had 1 goal, should have had a second one as well. And Kevin Dos Santos was really good as well. He scored another goal, and he's pretty electric down that left side for York. And then on the Ottawa side of things, Carl Howarth, of course, can't beat getting 2 goals. I think he's the only player to do that this weekend. He was fantastic. Diego Espejo scored a big goal late on as well. The defensive performance, again, they allowed 3 goals, but I thought overall, he actually had a pretty good game in center back. And Alberto Zapater, we keep talking about this guy, and rightly so. He's just a destroyer in midfield. He kind of lets players run at him because he knows he can tackle them. And I think that's a confidence and a defensive solidity that his team really needed, and I think he's really providing that for them.
Yeah, I think so too. There's a lot of pretty fun performances in this game and plenty of quality on both sides. Benedict, what is coming up next for both of these 2 teams? Because the table's getting tighter and points are getting more and more. Well, they're always the exact same value. You can't say they're more valuable later in the season, but maybe a little bit more desperation, I think, at times for these teams to keep pace with the rest of the league. Benny, tell us what is coming up for York United and Atletico Ottawa.
Yeah, two big ones next weekend. Both of them playing against other playoff teams. Forge hosting York on Saturday at TD. Not TD Place. That's in Warren's Field, at 7 p.m. on Saturday, and that should be a huge one. And then on Sunday, Atletico Ottawa travel to Langford for a game against Pacific FC. Big one that they could maybe close some ground at the top of the table as well. So that should be a big one as well.
That is a big one. That's a lot of fun. You know what, Benedict? Do you want to stick around with us for a little bit and talk about this 0-0 in Vancouver as we are a little bit early for our good friend AGR to get here? So maybe we'll just jump into it a little bit. We'll start bringing up the highlights, and if AGR joins, we'll all three break it down. But I didn't see this one, and I think it's maybe the only game of the weekend that I regret or don't regret missing. If that makes sense. It's a 0-0. Benedict, I know you watched this one, and tell me what happened in this game. Tell me why it was 0-0.
It was a 0-0, partly from some great goalkeeping from Ryan Yesley, and partly because neither of these teams are this season particularly good at finishing their chances. Both these sides have struggled for goals this season. Valour now have 13 goals in 18 games, which is not good enough for a team that wanted to make the playoffs this season for the first time. And this is just a game where there's just a lot of missed chances, and neither team could really capitalize on the few chances they did get, which is unfortunately has been the sort of the story of the season for both of them.
Yeah, I think so. I think both of these teams are maybe, Vancouver lately have been able to find a little bit more quality in the attack. They've brought guys like Diaz and Mickey Kentav into that side, and they have looked a lot better. But I guess maybe this is just one of those games where it just doesn't fall for them. Not quite, at least. Let's go back there and just hear some of the thoughts of the cast of characters around this game, because there were plenty. So maybe we'll start by getting the overall take on this game from Vancouver's coach, Afshin Kopi.
I'm very happy with the performance of the team, especially in the second half. Obviously, we're not happy with the results. I expected us to get more out of the game, and I think we created enough chances to win the game, and it's unfortunate those chances didn't convert to goals. But with so many new players in the group, the team is a much better football team. We can control games. We can play the football we want to play, at least a closer version of it that we've had before. Now it's a matter of the time to integrate and those final moments and those final touches and those final areas of the pitch to make them into goals. Again, I'm happy with the performance, but I'm really sad that we didn't get the 3 points.
Happy with the performance, sad they didn't get the 3 points. I think this is a really tough game for both of these teams to drop points in, right, Benedict? We talked about it a little bit before the game, during the week and whatnot, about how these two teams are, the rest of the pack are kind of slipping away from them a little bit. I think that puts Vancouver 11 points out of the playoffs, Valour 8. Certainly not impossible for either team. They both got 10 games left, but does this feel like a game, Benedict, where if one of them had taken the 3 points, particularly if Valour had taken the 3 points, they might have, felt they were in a bit more of a race, but I think they're maybe finding themselves a little bit adrift of that top 6 right now.
Yeah, I think the time for being happy with performances and not happy with results is kind of over for these teams. It's crunch time now. These teams have to start putting some points on the board, and both of them failed to put the full 3 points in this game. So I think Valour in particular, like you said, will probably be a little more disappointed knowing that they are still closer than Vancouver, I guess, when it comes in touching range of the playoffs. But at the same time, both these teams, I think that was probably the game that both of them had to win in order to really keep track, I guess, with the teams above them.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. It's a disappointing one, no doubt. And, again, a game where Vancouver's very young defense continues to grow. It's another clean sheet for them. But the goals aren't there at the other end. Let's go back again to Langley and just get the thoughts of Vancouver's striker, Sean Hundal.
I thought it was good. I think we started off slow. First half especially, I feel like I got 2 shots. I think that was only 2 shots in the first half. Didn't hit the target. But I think coming in the second half, I thought we did a lot better. Got into the game more, created a lot of chances. They're keeping me a lot of saves, but I feel like it's a step in the right direction. We got a point today, and hopefully we can go on a little run getting points and and moving up in the standings.
We will break down Vancouver a little bit more in a second, but let's also get the thoughts of Phil Dos Santos. Maybe look at these teams together, because Phil Dos Santos equally probably quite frustrated with this game and his team's difficulty scoring in recent weeks. So let's go back one more time to Langley and see what Valour's head coach Phil Dos Santos had to say.
We still gave some chances to the opposition. I think we limited to a lot of crosses from wide areas, or a few situations where we didn't deal well with the transition moments, or we could have killed the action earlier. But it was important to get at least something in a game that's going to be more and more difficult. I think that for teams coming here, it's going to get more and more difficult because of, one, the nature of where Vancouver is today. A bit like us, every game is a desperation game. And then also the fact that undeniably the team got better. They added pieces that are going to make the team better. So that was the positive thing. Another clean sheet was a positive thing. But again, it's the type of games that right now, where we're at as a team, we need to try and win.
Benedict, you look really different, man.
Yeah, something happened, a little blink, a little something, right?
Yeah, some kind of insane magic transformation. But anyway, AGR, you are here. We talked a little bit about this game, but you are truly our expert on this one. You were there in Langley and wrote all about it, all we need to know, so everybody can go to campl.ca to read about it. Since we just heard from Philip Dos Santos, though, AGR, let's start with them. Tell me a little bit about what was frustrating them in this game. Was it some bad luck with the finish? Was it a bit of an impotent attack? Was it Vancouver's defending? Just tell us why they've been struggling to score, specifically in this game.
Yeah, it kind of feels like a bit of everything, right? Something where, in midfield, they couldn't get the same rhythm they're usually getting. I think credit has to be given to Vancouver, because Vancouver almost played like off the ball. It was almost like a 4 at times, with how Vasco Fry was kind of on the left wing, but tucking in centrally out of possession. And I think that was surprised, because Valour kind of had pretty much what is their best choice midfield lineup, it feels like, between Dante Campbell, Diego Gutierrez, and Marcelo Polisi, 3 players that are good on the ball, and Vancouver did a good job of disrupting that flow. Then out wide, Pacific Nyongabir just couldn't get anything going against James Cameron, and I think credit has to be given to Cameron for handling that threat. But at the same time, with Valour, they have chances. Like, I think it's just something where the Walter Ponce chance, I think in the first half, that has to go in. It's just something where it came out of nothing. It was almost like it was a shot from Keon Williams. The ball falls for you. You hit the post, and I think that's just kind of the story of Valour's season. I think that was, Phil Dos Santos put it so well in his post-game, because, I asked Phil about it. You kind of have to at this stage, and he was like, yes, it's the story of our season. At a certain point, it's not luck, because, the stats say it. I think Valour's up to now, they've scored 6 goals less than expected. Like, that is an underperformance of all underperformances. But like Phil says, through 18 games, it's not something where you can be like, this is a 5-10 game stretch. We're going to turn it around. We're going to change. And it just feels like something's wrong up front. That's what it feels like. It just feels like, for whatever reason, the pieces are all there, but they don't necessarily fit. Like, when they want the 9 to get to stretch the field, they have someone who can hold it up. When they want a bit of hold up, they have someone who can stretch the field. Like, it just always feels like the striker and the front line is on a different wavelength. And it just kind of leads to these performances where they don't play that bad. It's a road performance. They have a clean sheet. They get their chances, but you're sitting there thinking, like, even then, it's still hard to say that, a 0-0 still felt like a fair result.
Yeah, I think it did. Troubling, certainly, for the team from Winnipeg. Before I get your thoughts on Vancouver, AGR, let's just go back there one more time and hear from a Valour player because Ryan Yesley, I think, had some good thoughts after this game, because he was a busy man, I think, in this one.
This is my job. I can't score, and the strikers can't really defend necessarily, directly for me. So I'm just trying to bring everything that I have to the table, staying focused on what I can do to help the team. And then I think everybody is doing that too. So it's only if we all do that, for sure, it's going to help the team. But yeah, it's definitely frustrating when you have a good team performance, but you can't really get that win.
Frustrating indeed. And to be fair, he says, I can't score and strikers can't defend. I've seen Ryan Yesley. He's very tall. I think if you stuck him in the box at the end of a game on a corner or something, he could score. Maybe that's what needs to happen. He's a pretty tall dude, man. Okay, back to Vancouver, though. Benedict talked a little bit about them and their performance, but AGR, you wrote a little bit about a bit of a shape change and some tactics for Vancouver. You've already alluded to them a little bit, but tell me what this performance looked like for Vancouver and maybe what you liked or didn't like about it.
Yeah, I think probably the big one is it was a professional performance, and I think we're seeing a bit of growth, a bit of maturity in this Vancouver side that they've honestly, I think despite the results, this has probably been their best 4-game stretch of the season, at least it feels to watch. And it's just something where you can see the new pieces have immediately plugged holes. They got that experience now in midfield in particular. I think that was the big surprise because, look, this Valour midfield group is solid. They've been controlling games against top teams. The fact that Vancouver earlier in the year, you're sitting there thinking they're getting destroyed in midfield and sometimes in games with just, they have a lack of natural options. And now they bring in Garcia. They got Vasco Fry. Gabriel Batar was playing a bit deeper at times. They were able to go toe-to-toe with Valour, and that's huge because it gave them a bit more control of the game. They disrupted the flow. They were able to make things frustrating for Valour. And for Vancouver, I think those are the sort of steps they needed because they have the quality in the attack, that they had the defenders, but they kind of needed something in the middle to kind of tie it down, and we're seeing the defense benefit from it. And I think it's only a matter of time that the goals start falling because they're getting chances. Like it's not a matter of sitting there and be like Vancouver's creating nothing. Like Sean Hundal could have had a hat trick with some of the chances. Alejandro Diaz had a great look. Rocco Romeo had the game on his head in the last minute. It's something where it feels like it's all coming together, and there's just been mature performances. And I think that's worth building off of because early in the season it was flashes, but it was just inexperience. It was sloppiness. It was wide open games. And I think, we're seeing a little less of that naivety despite the recent results where, again, you look against Cavalry, maybe the red card didn't do them favors. Ottawa away a couple of weeks ago, like Ottawa away is a tough match for anyone right now. Yeah. Like they've gone in all these tough scenarios and have done well and have accounted well. They just really, the results been the thing that's eluded them.
Yeah, I think so. And we have to remember with this Vancouver team that they're an expansion side and they are figuring out a lot of things on the fly. Everybody as a staff are, and the players certainly are coming together. And this team has been slowly, surely evolving and growing, and they've been adding more quality to the squad in the last few weeks. And this is a long-term project. This is not going to be, this was never going to be an easy season for them, and it certainly hasn't been. Alex, you singled out James Cameron at fullback in your match analysis, but tell us a little bit about him specifically, and then who else from this game stood out individually that deserves a little special credit for this game.
Yeah, shout out to James Cameron. Certainly, he's been someone who's made a name for himself. Certainly he made a name. He's got a name that when he came into the league, you remember James Cameron. How could you not, given all the movie references? But certainly he's shown that he can play at this level. And I think again the biggest thing for me is 18 years of age. That's just, it's wild. And he's a winger. This is someone who's figuring it out on the fly. And I just think for me over the last few weeks, some of the challenges he's gone up with, he's had to deal with the likes of Ali Musi, John Anil Hassi. You look at as well some of the threats Halifax has. Now you go up against Pacific Nyongabir, and you can look across those 4 games and be like, what, he's mostly got the better of a lot of those battles. And it's just the tenacity, it's the speed, it's the desire. And I think Afshin Gotbi mentioned it as well. He highlighted him after the game, just saying, this is someone where it's fearlessness. He's 18, first professional season. He's not a defender. You throw him in, he's responded to the challenge. And that's huge. Vancouver needs that from youngsters. That's going to help their growth curve. That's going to help their development. You can only imagine what a guy like Cameron can do next year, for example, if you're going to look ahead to that with this year of seasoning under his belt. So that was huge from him. Otherwise, I think Vasco Fry, just in his debut, I think he brought a bit of snarl in midfield that was maybe lacking, because I think Garcia's brought an experience, but he hasn't really been someone to he's smart. He's a bit of an older player. He's not going to go out and be laying out these rock solid tackles. Like, he knows it's not worth it for his body at this stage. He's more positioning, more getting in front of the ball. Vasco Fry maybe brought a bit of snarl that hasn't been there, and I think that helped Vancouver a lot. Like, right away, 10 minutes in, Fry absolutely put in a tough tackle. And I think that's sometimes the work rate that Vancouver's needed at times this year. So that was a good sign from him to bring that immediately off his debut. Otherwise, the defense did well, Vancouver. And if I was going to shout someone from Valour, certainly a few options. But again, I think Ryan Yesley kind of led the way and rescued some points for his team in key moments. And I think otherwise as well, it was I think it was a solid showing from someone like a Marcelo Polisi in midfield. I think it's something where despite them not being in control as much as usual, he was kind of everywhere and getting involved and getting in the fight. And Valour needed that on the road, and it kind of gave him a bit of energy.
Yeah, I think so. Ryan Yesley in the team of the week in goal, as is James Cameron at left back, who has, you're absolutely right, AGR, he has impressively managed to stay afloat in the professional game as an 18-year-old, and I am profoundly sorry for that appalling pun. But AGR, before we let you go, tell me what's next for both of these teams. We've talked about their situation in the table. Are they kind of getting into must-win territory? Tell me what's coming up next week.
Well, this was must-win territory for me. I think they've gotten very fortunate because pretty much everyone in front of them dropped points. Like Pacific and Cavalry, the only teams to win this weekend. I think if you're Vancouver or Valley, you're probably pretty happy that's the case, right? That it's not an Ottawa, not a York, not a Halifax. So for them, it's win and string at least 2 or 3 together. And it's tough this weekend. For Valour, they get Cavalry at home. Valour is certainly going to want to get back to winning ways. That's kind of something where, especially, it's been so unusual to see them lose 3 straight at home. So can they return to that, go frustrate Cavalry, and get a win and maybe build off that because they've got a few home games coming up? Then for Vancouver, it's a tough one. Halifax away, and not many teams are going into Halifax and getting wins right now. Certainly Pacific been more of the exception to the rule with their win yesterday. So can Vancouver go just get something out of that one? They're going to need a win. A win's going to be a tall ask, but look, Vancouver's played a lot better as of late, so no better way to culminate this great 4-game stretch than finish off a 5th game with the win, I suppose.
Yeah, certainly one that I will be excited to be watching. Alex Gangeruzik, thank you so much for joining us. We're sorry that we jumped the gun a little bit on you, but we are absolutely grateful to get you in here and get your excellent analysis, which everybody can read at campl.ca and onesoccer.ca. But with that, AGR, we will say goodbye to you, and we will bring back for a I don't know about triumphant return, but some kind of return from Mr. Mitchell Tierney, who has agreed to play an encore for us here at the end of the show. We're going out to Halifax. The weekend wrapped up with a gorgeous day at the Wanderers grounds on a holiday Monday, a big sellout crowd, but it is Pacific that emerged the happier from Natal Day. Mitchell, tell us about this game. It seemed like a fun one. Just give us a rating out of 10 and what specifically you enjoyed about it.
Yeah, I'll go with an 8.5. There was.
You're gonna want the mic there.
I'm gonna want. Hey, no one could see me, so I'm sure they could hear though. I'll go with an 8.5. There was drama until the very end. In this one, really, really well contested match. I think in writing the match report, I was pretty much ready to make significant changes up until the final moment as Halifax pressed late when they went down 2, and then were able to score one themselves. And like you mentioned, a fantastic atmosphere in Halifax, as well as kind of the backdrop to a match like this, and a huge result for Pacific, albeit a bit of a controversial one, as I'm sure we'll get into. But they play the vast majority of the rest of their season on the road. And so getting 3 points at one of the most difficult places to play in the league is an excellent start kind of to that stretch, and puts them back top of the table.
Yeah, it certainly does. And that is a very important, I think, away performance from Pacific to show us that they can do it on the road, because as you mentioned, they are going to have to do that a lot. Before we dive in specifically to what was good about the Tridents in this game, let's go back to the Wanderers grounds, and we'll start off with the thoughts of their head coach, James Merriman.
I think the effort, the mentality, the way that we approach the game from the start to right to the finish, they put a lot of pressure on us in the end, but we stayed solid, we stayed together, we defended well, we didn't give up too much. Big performance and mentality from the group, absolutely.
Big performance, big mentality. Mitch, you wrote it was a textbook away performance after this game. They are back on top of the table, Pacificar. Tell me what was working for them and what impressed you about this performance.
Yeah, I think just the work rate of the team, again, in one of the most difficult travel stretches for them to go across the country like that, to be able to put in a shift like that, starting up front with the work that Ongaro and Reed and Hurd did pressing Halifax when they played out of the back, but then how quickly they were able to get back into that shape and be unbelievably hard for Halifax to play through for most of the match, and kind of willing to give up possession, but then when they get the ball back, they were positive and vertical and able to create chances and goals as well. So a lot to like there. And then to be able to see out the results when Halifax were really pressing late, and a lot of performances to like there, but someone like Gazdoff, who earlier in the season maybe had a couple of mistakes that cost his team late in matches, to be able to hold on there, really look confident, was a bright spot from the young goalkeeper who's maybe starting to earn himself in that conversation for the starting role again in Pacific.
It seems like it, and he's certainly making a case for it there. If you've made it this long into the show with us for 45 minutes, you've probably been, disappointed not to hear the voice of our fearless leader, Christian Jack. So don't worry. He is on the ground in Halifax as he was yesterday, and he caught up with Amir Didic at the Wanderers grounds after this one.
Christian Jack alongside Amir Didic. Post-game reaction brought to you by Allstate. Pacific get a 2-1 victory here at a raucous Wanderers grounds in Halifax. How are you feeling after that one? That was a big one.
Yeah, it's a big one. After going after a horrible July, as we all would say in the locker room there, and coming out last week and picking up where we left off in the beginning of the season, getting the 3-0 victory, and then coming here, we know it was going to be a tough game. Halifax is cruising right now. They're playing some good football. They're picking up points, so this was definitely a game where we need to come out from start to the end, and that's something we've been struggling with lately is the starts, and last week we started off well, and this week was okay, and brilliant performance for the boys, and it's a tough place to come out here and play with all these fans.
Certainly is. They'd won 5 straight on the bounce here. You talk about playing from start to the end. Tell us what that's like when you're defending and they're throwing everything at you. They had Perusa up there, they had Morelli, they put Nimick up there at the end, they're putting balls in the box. You and Thomas and others are just heading them out. What's that feeling like when you know that you've been able to dug deep and be able to get your team out of that?
Yeah, I know Tommy can attest to it too as well. It's the best feeling,
right.
When you're in the lead and as defenders, as center back specifically, you feed off of that. You like the end game, and it's like up to you guys, the back line to finish it out, and that's something that we have been training every day as well too, with the back line, full back, center backs, goalies, and it's just the result of the process we've been doing every day in training.
You've won 5 away games now in 5 different markets. You still can win in Calgary, and you could still go away and win at York. You'd be the first team in regular season history to go to all different markets and win. You've still got that clean sweep there. What's it about your team right now, playing away from home, that you see when you're defending and you're watching it in front of you?
Yeah, it's obviously we have a tough stretch here coming up with all these games away from home, but it's something we look forward to as a team. It's a challenge, and we're good with challenges. And you saw it last year as well. When things hit the fan, we played better. We rose to the occasion and such. So, yeah, we're looking at this as like any other game. And obviously, you would like to have your home fans there with you every single game. But again, just something we feed off of. And it's the last stretch. And luckily, we're able to bounce back from that July, like I stated, which was very important for us. And hopefully, we can keep going, keep working, and keep doing what we're doing.
Last one for you. You go to the top of the table again. You talk about your home fans. I'm sure you'll be wishing to play home games at home in the playoffs. But what does this kind of atmosphere, Amir, this kind of game where it was very competitive, what does that do for you to get your team ready to go out and try and win a championship?
Yeah, it just sets the tone also, and just how it's going to be late in the end of the season, right? Because we might have a moment where we're back here again. There might be a moment where we're going away again and we're fighting, and the fans are in a hostile mood, right? Such as today, right? You look around and it's buzzing everywhere. Even though you're focused playing, you still hear it. You feel the intensity when the tide changes, when things start to shift, as you felt it in the end, right? But that's as a player and as a team, you feed off of that, and yeah, I mean, it was just an excellent day for us.
You mentioned it, proper football atmosphere, proper football game with two teams trying to play. Congratulations, been on the winning end of it. Got to the top of the table. Congrats again. Thanks, Amir.
Thank you.
Composed and professional interview from Amir Didic after a composed and professional performance from Pacific FC, who spoiled the kitchen party on Natal Day in Halifax. Mitchell, let's get into the Wanderers, though. They had a lot of fight in them in this game. They came quite close at the end. Didn't quite get there, although I think they'll feel, and I believe we'll both probably agree, that they probably should have had a penalty just before halftime when Massimo Ferrin was taken down. But Mitchell, give us your thoughts on the Wanderers' performance kind of as a whole in this game, and tell me a bit about what you felt may have been a bit of a learning experience for them.
Yeah, I think maybe 2 penalties, which makes it even more difficult because Gazdov made some pretty big contact in the box late in the match on Peruzza. But and I think the impact of what a penalty with Pacific was being so difficult to break down, what a goal then would have done. But I think if you're Halifax, you can't obviously control that, so you have to adjust to those moments. And for a young team, this is a lesson in doing that. And you look, they allow a goal almost immediately after, where they basically switch off on a set piece, and that's exactly what Pacific's looking for, is that moment to take the lead and build into their game plan. And then they come out of the halftime break, Joao Morelli almost immediately gets a yellow card for dissent. They allow another quick goal, and then that's a mountain that they're ultimately unable to climb. So as things get more and more contentious and close down the stretch, they're going to have to work on moments like this, be it to call or anything else that maybe doesn't go quite their way, not allowing it to affect them so much. And it's obviously difficult, because it's human nature to get frustrated when stuff like this happens and stuff that's out of your control. But again, it is out of their control, and what is in their control is how they respond. And I think there's a lesson to be learned in how they do that from this match. By and large, their second half was excellent. There's a lot to like in Peruzza coming off the bench. There's a lot of good coming out of Halifax these days, and I think this match doesn't put a damper on that. But yeah, sometimes the losses can give you tough lessons, and I think this will be one of those days.
Yeah, definitely a very frustrating one. But again, a Halifax team that is continuing to grow and evolve. Let's go one more time back to the Wanderers ground zone. We'll get the thoughts of their head coach, Patrice Geyser.
I mean, Toussaint and Sean and Manu did great, and I thought our three with Callum and Lorenzo and Andre did great. When you lose a game 2-1 and one's off a throw-in, off a cross, and a set piece, and you score one off a corner, it just tells you how close a game it was. None of the 3 goals were scored from more than 3 passes. So obviously it was a very tight, contested game, and I still think, I just looked at the stats, I still think we made like 400 to 500 passes. We had 65% possession, but obviously you expect that being the we're a home team. So it was very good. I mean, as I said, probably one of their strengths is the middle of the park, and they were very, contesting everything and had a lot of energy to cover ground. So again, a lot of credit goes to them to come in here to try to disrupt us.
Some good points from Patrice. I just looked at it. Halifax 535 accurate passes in this game, and Pacific 293. That's wild to me, and certainly not a stat line you would have expected to see last year, I think. But maybe a testament to how far Halifax are coming. But they did, unfortunately for them, lose this game. All right, Mitchell, one last call for your greats from this game. Patrice talked a lot about the midfield battle there and the 2 trios, but which players from either side impressed you from this game?
Yeah, I think all 3 Pacific midfielders, as Patrice was impressed with them as well, were excellent. Sean Young kind of maybe back to his best in terms of the chances he created. And, that clipped ball over the top to Ongaro on the first goal was beautiful. Aparicio, he's always going to bring you that energy in the middle of the park. And, if Ruben Del Campo's cross earlier in the week wasn't the cross of the week, or the cross of the season, even this from Manny Aparicio is probably up there as well to set up the second goal. So, and then Toussaint, honestly, one of the best number 6s in the league, I think, this year in terms of his ability to play in that destroyer role. He was solid once again. Ongaro leading the top. Mario Jaguar scored in Didic, and just the work they did defensively. And then on Halifax's side, Dan Nimick, a player who, is probably in the competition with Didic for defender of the season. He won 12 of 13 duels. He scored. They had him playing as a striker late in the match because of, what he can provide up top. So that was very impressive. And then West Timoteo, you mentioned some of the passing completed. He barely put a foot wrong. I think he had like 85 of 88 passes completed or something ridiculous like that. He set up the goal, an outstanding match from him. So players to really like on both sides. And, I think from maybe the best contested match of the weekend in terms of just the quality that both sides presented.
Right. Lorenzo Caligari had 133 touches in this game. And I think once we finish here, I'm going to go look into if that's a record or not, because that is an insane number of touches. Timoteo, 117, by the way. That's also pretty nuts. 4 Pacific players in the team of the week this week, though. Josh Hurd, Manny Aparicio, Sean Young, and Amir Didic, all well-deserved. Unfortunately, I don't think they could fit any Halifax players in there because it was quite a competitive week. But you mentioned Dan Nimick, Mitchell. He has been outstanding this year. He was good again in this game and scores a goal. And KJ was able to catch up with him as well post-match. So let's go back to the Wanderers grounds one last time and get the thoughts of Dan Nimick.
Post-game reaction brought to you by Allstate here on the Wanderers grounds. A rare home loss for Halifax. The narrow loss over Pacific by 2-1 with star defender Dan Nimick, who got the goal. Overall, Dan, what were your feelings after that one?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one. We obviously conceded that late goal in the first half, something that gives us flashbacks to early in the season. That was a problem we had, and we managed to fix it. Unfortunately, we just switch off. Obviously, there's things that happened before that obviously we can't talk about here, but so it was a bit of a tough one going in at half-time, and the first thing we said is we can't concede another. We're still in this game. We know we're going to score goals. We're a team that likes to score goals, so we're still in it. And then, unfortunately, we give up that second one, and it's a killer. I think the guys showed great fight to stay in the game at that point. I mean, if you look back to York at home earlier in the season, we might have, at that point, crumbled. But we showed good fight. We were able to get one back, but unfortunately, it wasn't enough. We regroup, and we're still confident, and we're still looking to make a run in this league.
Yeah, still in the playoff spots, home against the Vancouver this weekend again, so you get to play back on this pitch. You said you got one back. You were there. What did you see with the header? What did you see with that goal? You have a habit of getting these goals. What did you see with that one? A nice one from open play rather than your last one from the spot.
Yeah, Jan and Jed were talking to me before the game, and they were saying one thing Kale and I need to add is goals. I mean, I had the penalty earlier in the year, but that's the only thing we've
from
contributed.
Set pieces kind of thing.
Attacking, yeah. So fortunately, I was able to get a free run, and the ball was coming in nicely, and I was able to attack it. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough in the end, but yeah, happy to get on the score sheet.
It's a holiday Monday, Dan, and this crowd was fantastic, wasn't it? You've just been signing autographs for a long time after the game here. I know it's your first season. The way that you're playing, it might be your last, but we'll see. What's it like playing in front of this crowd?
It's incredible. I remember when we went 2-0 down. I think there was a feeling on the team that maybe we were letting the crowd down. They showed out in numbers, as they always do. And then I remember hearing from the crowd someone shouting, "Come on, Halifax, we're still in this. And that gave me the confidence to push on, and knew that they were still behind us, no matter that we were 2-0 down, and they still were going to fight for us. So it gave us the energy to fight for them. And unfortunately, it wasn't enough, but I thought we showed good character to keep pushing to the final whistle.
You know, Dan, that's a fantastic point. You know, there's a really educated fan base here. That's what football fans are about. I mean, you grew up being a ball boy at Ellen Road. You know what fans are like there, to get behind the team. That's what they're here for, isn't it? To get behind your team. And this is not just a fan base that just shows up to eat and drink here. They're knowledgeable fans.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why we've had so much success at home. It's honestly like having a 12th man out there. they really get behind you and they give that energy to push on and keep fighting till the final whistle. And that's all you can ask for, really.
Well, many of them have been telling me today, Dan Nimick, Defender of the Year nominee. So you keep up your great work in front of them. They know their football by obviously saying that. You've been terrific so far. Keep it up, and hopefully we'll see you in the playoffs as well.
Yeah.
Keep on the good run.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Appreciate
it.
Wonderful stuff from Dan, and it is very special to see those packed out crowds in Halifax. It has been since year one, and I think that is a crowd that is being increasingly rewarded this year with Halifax's home record. Not so much in this game, though. By the way, shout out to Dan for being very classy, kind of dancing around the penalty call, but also shout out to our video editor, Michael, for overlaying the clip of it immediately. So great stuff on both ends. Mitchell, though, what is going on next weekend for both of these teams? Are they busy? Do they have anything going on?
Oh, always busy, always busy. Yeah. Speaking of home matches, Pacific have their only home match of the month as they host Atletico Ottawa, in a match that is always tricky for them at Starlight Stadium, given Atletico Ottawa's propensity for coming there and being very, very annoying. And the Wanderers, they face the other BC team, Vancouver FC, who they still have not defeated this season, or I guess in club history. So that's something that they'll definitely want to do, and getting back to their winning ways at the Wanderers grounds. And they obviously play a ton of home games towards the end of the season. So those are kind of the dueling narratives around these two teams as they finish up the season, and obviously both very heavily in the race right now.
Yeah, they certainly did not beat Vancouver last season, and honestly didn't even show up. So
terrible performances against Vancouver.
We'll see if it's
season.
A little better this time around. Mitchell, thank you as always. You agreed to play 2 sets for us today. I know that it's hard to balance that with your, according to some guy on Instagram, job at 7-Eleven. So we will let you get back to stocking the shelves right now. As
gonna go slang some slushies right now.
Absolutely, attaboy. Save one for me. But anyway, we will bring up the standings here as Mitchell goes back to work. Pacific FC, as we've discussed, back on top of the table, 2 points up on Cavalry and a point clear of Forge, who have played 1 extra game, we should remember. Very, very tight, though. We see this 3-way tie between Atletico Ottawa, York United, and Halifax Wanderers on 25 points apiece, which is just crazy. And then Valour and Vancouver down there at the bottom, trying desperately to get back into that picture, and they'll continue to try it next week. But, for me, this is a pretty crazy race. We got to remember that 5-team playoff format now, where every single point, every single spot in that playoff bracket is going to matter. So it is no longer good enough for teams to just get into the playoffs, because they'll be desperate to get 1 spot ahead, up to second, up to first, get that play-in game, make sure they can host a play-in game or a final. So we are expecting a pretty fun final 9 or 10 games of the season for every team, which begins next weekend, obviously, with the schedule. Valour FC hosting Cavalry on Friday night in Winnipeg, 7 Central, 8 Eastern, followed by a doubleheader on Saturday when Halifax hosts Vancouver, 4 Atlantic, 3 Eastern. Forge hosting York United in a 9:05 derby that night, though, at 7 o'clock Eastern at Tim Hortons Field. And then on Sunday, we will wrap up week 18 when Pacific FC are back home for a brief repose before they go back on the road, taking on Atletico Ottawa Sunday, 1:30 Pacific, 4:30 Eastern. With that, we will have to bid you farewell. We will be back next week on Monday afternoon, live at noon, as usual, as we get back into a normal schedule, hopefully, and we will get you all set for the race to the playoffs. But for now, this has been the CPL Newsroom presented by Volkswagen. Goodbye.
That's clever. Now Insigne from Cavalry. Looks for goal, finds the goal. performance.